Okay, so in this video I'm going to introduce OOP, which is just an acronym for Object-Oriented Programming. So, what is Object-Oriented Programming? Programming in terms and classes. Okay, so kind of a key definition, object-oriented programming. Programming in terms of objects and classes. Java can possess two other types of programming, which are functional programming and procedural programming. I'm not going to talk about those because you don't need to know them for AP. You don't need to know them for like a lot of other things. The only time you really need to know them is competitive programming, but if that's really important, I can cover it a little bit later. But as of now, object-oriented programming is the most important because every year it does appear on the AP exam. So, object-oriented programming. Programming in terms of objects and classes. So everything you do is upon the creation of an object in OOP. OOP is covered at the beginning of Unit 2 and part of Unit 5 in AP. So you see it in the beginning of Unit 2 upon the creation and the storing of objects, and then later in Unit 5, when you talk about writing classes, you learn about getters and setters with encapsulation, and a lot of those other things like constructors and all those stuff come in Unit 5. So that's why OOP is important for AP. It's basically 1.5 units, so be sure you pay attention for AP. So, two terms. Objects. I should put class first and then object, because that's kind of the order of how it follows. So I'm going to start with an object. A class method. And then I'm going to do an object. Okay. So let's define both of them. A class is just a blueprint or template for creating objects. That's literally what a class is. You can make a class by the keyword class, modifier, class, ignore the comment, just make it class A. That's how you create a class in Java. Your main class should match your file name. Your main class will also have your main method, public site void main string array args. So you can also have additional classes that will all come together and do the same thing. That's kind of what OOP does. But yeah, that is a class, a blueprint or template for creating or storing objects. An object, an instance of a class. You're going to understand these definitions when we talk about it a little bit. So those are the two definitions. So another thing I want to cover. Objects can have attributes, which are their physical characteristics. Or methods. Its behavior. So, key thing to know. Objects can have attributes, physical characteristics, or methods, behaviors. So, that's kind of a little bit of the introduction of what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and erase this, and let's delve into what we're doing. By the way, if you're in AP, be sure to stop and take notes. This is a key part of your exam, so it's important you should know this. And the markers fell. That's unfortunate. Okay, so how am I going to start this? Let's say we had a class. Our class, for example, is the Apple Store. I don't know why I'm bringing this up. I did get a new phone, so, makes sense why I'm bringing it up. So, our class is the Apple Store. Keep in mind that object-oriented programming is just programming in the real world. So, you can basically apply many things to be classes and objects that kind of make sense. So, in object-oriented programming, you are programming in the real world in terms of classes and objects. So, your Apple Store is your class. This is just an example. Okay? The Apple Store will contain iPhones. And those are your objects, right? An iPhone can possess many attributes. Its color, its size. Yeah, those are the main two I really want to get into. Of iPhone can also possess many methods. Remember that remember that objects can have attributes and methods. Objects can have attributes and methods. There we go. That's a key thing to know. AP must know it too. Objects can have attributes, physical characteristics, and methods, behaviors. So, its attributes, color and size. Two main things, right? iPhone's methods is ringing. So whether the phone is ringing or not. Turn on is a method. Right? Whether the phone is turned on or not. Pick up, whether the phone is picked up. These are many methods that you can do that an iPhone can possess, right? It can ring, it can turn on, it can pick up, it can turn off, it can do all those kinds of things. So we can program it to do and pick up these kind of methods. And it's kind of where things get interesting. Okay, so we've covered OOP. That's the synopsis. Remember, OOP is just objects in the real world. When we pick up examples of objects, like a phone is an object, like this marker is an object, this board is an object, this room I'm in is a class because it stores many of these objects. So it's just programming in terms of the real world. So we got that. Now, what I want to do is, how will this be in code? So we have a class. We call it the Apple Store. Right? Okay. Let me make this my main class, just because when I want another class later. So, right? And then this is our main method. I'm not going to write the whole thing out, but you probably know what the main method is by now. So, okay, and then we're going to go down here, and we're going to create another class. And we're going to call it, I don't know, V2. What we're going to do here is, we have an object, an iPhone, right? We can make methods for this iPhone, right? We can initialize attributes for it, and we can make colors for it. So let's say we do string iPhone color. And that's going to be red. And that's because that's color of my phone. So iPhone color is red, right? So what we can do here is we can go back to our main method. We can create an object of v2. So to create an object, you just have to reference the class name, because remember that an object is just an instance of a class, right? Gotta write that down. Key point for AP and for anybody who wants to improve their programming skills. Objects are an instance of a class. So, you got a string, iPhone color, you call it red, right? Then, we make our object, v equals new v2. And then what we can do is we can print v dot iPhone color. That should be a capital P. You're gonna error saying that that's not defined, but you should get the gist. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna print red, because that's what we defined in this class. So this is kind of a little bit of how object-oriented programming works. We made a string, which is our attribute. I'm gonna make that our attribute. And I called it red. And then what I did is I went back to my main method, and then I made an object of it, and then I used the dot operator. Remember that the dot operator, I forgot to talk about that. It's been a long week. So the dot operator is used on objects to call their respective attributes and methods. So that's the dot operator, used on objects to call their respective attributes and methods. So we create our object and we use the dot operator to call our attribute. So that's kind of how it works for attributes. So now let's make a method and try it. Remember that objects can have attributes and methods. So why don't we try creating a method in our secondary class? So let's make a void, and we're gonna call it. Nah, I can't make it void. I might make it public just because. And what do I call this? Is ringing. We've created our method signature, and then what we can do is we can print. By the way, this is pseudocode, this line. What do we print? Ring. There we go. There we go. So that's our method, right? We can come back here and we can do is ringing. We can do our dot operator is ringing. Close that, and that's just going to be. That's what's going to print out. So I hope that makes sense. That's kind of how object-oriented programming works. So we're using the dot operator to call our object. Remember, we can initialize an object. We called the object v. So that's the object name. This is a class it's referencing. And then we use the new keyword to initialize the object. So that's the object initialization. Then we use the dot operator to call the respective object's attributes and methods. So this is its attributes, that's its method, and that's going to print red, and that's going to print ring. Keep in mind that if I made these static, I wouldn't have to use the dot operator, since static just means it belongs to the class rather than an object. So that's kind of why I created an object and I didn't make these static. Keep in mind that attributes can use static as well as methods. So that's kind of a demonstration of how object-oriented programming works. Remember that objects can possess methods and attributes. Methods are its behaviors and attributes are its characteristics. And remember that the dot operator can be used to call an object's methods and attributes. So, object-oriented programming. There are 4 key things you need to know. And this is kind of how I'm going to wrap up the video. Object-oriented programming has 4 key fundamental concepts. AP must know 3 of the 4 because one of them was removed from the exam as of the 2019-2020 school year. And you'll know which one that is. So you got inheritance, you got polymorphism, and then you have abstraction, and then you got encapsulation. So, 4 key terms you must know. AP must know 3 of them. So I'm going to call them the 4 core OOP concepts. Inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction, and encapsulation. 4 key things that OOP possesses. So let's define each of them. Inheritance, the process where a subclass inherits the attributes and methods from the superclass. I'm going to talk about this in this order, so I'm going to go inheritance, then polymorphism, then abstraction, then encapsulation. AP can ignore abstraction. It is removed from the exam as of the 2019-2020 school year. So from there on further, which we're in 2022 right now. So abstraction is no longer on the AP CSA exam, so you do not have to worry about studying it. And I don't think teachers will cover it either. Some teachers might cover it, other teachers might not. It just depends on the teacher. I know mine in Memorial, they cover abstraction a little bit. They cover interfaces briefly, but they don't do it much in depth because it is removed from the exam. Okay, so polymorphism, the process where an object possesses many forms. Right? It's in the definition itself. Polymorphism. Morphism is just many forms. Poly is many. So morphism is forms. Poly is many. So many forms. So it's just an object possesses many forms. Polymorphism. Abstraction. I'm still going to define it, even though it's no longer on the AP exam. School year. Where unnecessary details, sorry for my spelling, you're going to realize that modifiers come into OOP, which is why I like to introduce them a little bit before or probably a video after OOP. It just depends on how my editing and everything goes, but I usually like to introduce them before OOP or a video after OOP. Just depends on how the editing goes. But you see that modifiers come in hand because in inheritance, you're going to find yourself using the protected modifier a lot because the protected modifier makes the subclasses visible to be able to see attributes and methods. And you're going to see that abstraction uses the abstract modifier, and you're going to see like a lot of those things come in handy. And you're seeing encapsulation use the private access modifier. So it's kind of like modifiers go in handy with OOP, which is why I like to introduce them in that kind of way. Hidden from the user. Encapsulation, our final topic. This is on the AP exam, and it comes in Unit 5. I'm gonna for AP. Just because I know there's a lot of people who might be watching this that are doing AP CSA, so I'm going to note down the unit for them. So for polymorphism, comes in Unit 9, inheritance. I hope you can read that. That just means that polymorphism, it's a short lesson when you come into on Unit 9 inheritance. Inheritance is Unit 9. Right? Kind of what the word says. Abstraction is removed from the exam. Not going to worry about that too much. And encapsulation is Unit 5, writing classes. I know many teachers like to put Unit 9 right after Unit 5. I know mine does, but a lot of teachers definitely love doing that. And that's because you need to understand OOP before you can do inheritance. And you don't want to do writing classes, right? And then go into arrays, array lists, and then searching and sorting, right? You don't want to go through all that and then come back to OOP when you learn inheritance. So that's why I think it's great, and a lot of other teachers think it's great to talk about Unit 5, writing classes, which is just a bunch of object-oriented programming, and then come to Unit 9, inheritance, which is also a continuation on OOP. I forgot to mention for AP OOP covers in part of Unit 2, Unit 5, and completely Unit 9 as well. I did forget to mention that. At the beginning, I did say it was only Unit 2 and Unit 5, but Unit 9 also does cover OOP. So it's mainly 2.5 units, not 1.5. So Unit 5, writing classes, comes in encapsulation. So after that long talk, I have not defined encapsulation. So what is it? Sugarcoating attributes. By sugarcoating, I mean make them private. Which I don't know if y'all know or don't know yet. Just depends on my editing. I don't know if I put this before, I don't know if I put this after modifiers or if I put this before modifiers. Just depends on how the editing goes. Which it probably might go after modifiers. So, encapsulation, sugarcoating attributes. Make them private. And provide an object with getters and setters. For AP, College Board likes to call getters accessors and setters mutuators. You'll hear me call them getters and setters, but you'll hear College Board call them accessors and mutuators. They mean the same thing. They do. They mean the same thing. So if you hear me call them getters, just know College Board calls them accessors. If you hear me call them setters, College Board calls them mutuators. You'll hear other people call them mutuators as well. I just brought in College Board because I know a lot of people from AP are watching this. So, encapsulation. Sugarcoating attributes, make them private, provide an object with getters, accessors, and setters, mutuators, and those will both be public, so they're visible among all classes, all packages. So, those are the 4 core OOP concepts, and I did include the unit in which they pop up. So, encapsulation will come in Unit 5, inheritance will come in Unit 9, and polymorphism will come in Unit 9. Abstraction is removed as of now, so you don't have to worry about abstraction. I will still cover it, but AP can ignore that video because it's no longer on the exam. So that's kind of it. That is the synopsis and the introduction of object-oriented programming. Later, I'm going to cover what each of these things do. But as of now, that's kind of the introduction. So know that object-oriented programming is programming in the real world in terms of classes and objects. A class is just a blueprint or a template of creating objects or storing them. An object is just simply an instance of a class. Objects can possess attributes, their physical characteristics, and methods, behaviors. The programmer can program those. To create an object, you need to reference its class, and then you need to reference the object's name, and then you can use the new keyword to initialize them, and then the class name. The dot operator can be used to call an object's attributes and methods. And then there are now 4 core OOP concepts: inheritance, polymorphism, abstraction, encapsulation. Inheritance is a process where a subclass inherits the attributes and methods from the superclass. Polymorphism is a process where an object possesses many forms. Abstraction is removed from the AP exam, but it is the process where unnecessary details are hidden from the user. And encapsulation is sugarcoating attributes, making them private, and provide an object with getters, accessors, or setters, mutuators. So that summed up OOP. I hope you understood it. AP, you must know OOP. It is important. It is a big chunk of your exam. Inheritance of polymorphism pop up in Unit 9. Encapsulation pops up in Unit 5, and objects are briefly covered in the introduction to Unit 2, although some teachers do come back to Unit 5 and cover objects as well. So that's OOP. AP, OOP is covered in 2.5 units. Unit 2 talks about objects. Unit 9 talks about these two. Unit 5 is this. And also constructors and all those kinds of things are Unit 5 as well. But yeah, that's it. That's OOP.